Hello, you wonderful people. So continuing, the Comic-Con trailer video thing. For this video, I just want to talk about, obviously, the trailers that dropped for both the Aquaman movie and the Shazam movies. If you haven't seen the trailers already, I'll include links in the description down below to both of them. So overall, I'll probably talk about them one at a time, but also across the board. I mean, the fact of the matter is, these trailers did a very good job of setting up the tones for each movie. I think it's kind of what people kind of wanted. Now, I think people might be a little more like, oh, receptive to this because they seem very lighthearted trailers. Because I mean, to be fair, maybe like people might think like, oh, well, when you actually get to the movie, it's going to be dark and gritty. But I think so far they set the tones of like, oh, especially with Shazam, because I feel like that one's really playing up that angle. But I mean, that's at least from what we've seen so far, because it's just kind of like, oh man, I'm a superhero. Isn't it the coolest, craziest thing ever? Like, because everyone else has almost kind of been established already in their respective mark. Can we get to see a hero from the beginning? Like, I got powers, like, oh my god, this is crazy, let me figure things out. Everyone else had kind of been a hero for a little while. Borderlining like Flash and Aquaman, Cyborg 2, they just kind of were doing their own thing, but at least like Wonder Woman and Batman, I mean, I guess we arguably saw it with Superman too, but it's just kind of like, this is him from the very beginning of like, oh, I just got these powers, let me test them out type of thing. But like, that's me kind of getting a little ahead of myself to a certain degree. Like, I mean, first of all, let's talk about Aquaman first. I think they did a very great job setting this up because like, for one, like we get a very nice look at Atlantis, and it looks beautiful. Like, it looks bright and colorful. I mean, I think you would have to make it bright and colorful, but it looks nice. All the sea creatures and stuff flowing around and stuff. I'm curious to see what their technology is like, because I'm sure it's been showcased and stuff before, but I'm curious to see what their civilization is kind of really like. Could we get like, little peeks at it, which is kind of interesting. Once again, Aquaman is one of those heroes I don't know that much about, because everyone's kind of got that perception of Aquaman. They're like, oh, Aquaman sucks. I mean, it's like, we actually, because they're like, it's like, oh, he's a dude that talks to fish and stuff like that, which is like, once again, like, Aquaman is a badass, because I think most people, when they think of Aquaman, it's the whole joke, because and I've said, I made a video alone, so I'm gonna go about this, is because most people think of like old school Aquaman. They don't really take into account like more modern Aquaman, because the one I used as an example way back then was like Justice League's Aquaman, the one with the hook hand and stuff. He was kind of a badass, just kind of like, he didn't take no mess from nobody. I mean, he kind of like, the first time he shows up in Justice League, he's kind of an asshole. But even on the surface, like, cause obviously we see it in Justice League too. He's like he's got superhuman strength, so he doesn't just need like, oh, his sea creatures or water to kind of be a badass. He can handle on his own, even on land. Which I think that's something we will get to see more in this movie, is him showcasing his abilities more underwater, like talking to fish, sharks, and stuff like that. And him probably a lot more, definitely you see bits of it in the trailer, like more underwater combat, because most of Justice League he's on the surface. So. Also finding out, the fact is that he's half human. I had no idea that was his whole storyline. Once again, not a comic book person. I mean, it's just kind of interesting. It's just kind of like the same thing with Wonder Woman, finding out she's part god. I was like, oh, what? Whoa, that's crazy. Same thing in this regard. And I think that's going to be a nice fit for his story, because he is balancing both worlds. I mean, because like I said, we've seen him have more experience with at least with Justice, we saw him have more experience with the human world than he did his own people. Like I said, we didn't really get to showcase a lot of him in that, which is interesting, because obviously this is his solo movie, but his solo movie, because the only person who's interestingly enough had a solo movie and then it sets up something in the future is Superman. That was eventually Batman v Superman and then Justice League, which is interesting. But everyone else is like, their solo movies are coming out after Justice League, which I think is fascinating. Which I'm assuming, I mean, not all of it's going to take place after Justice League, but I feel like a good chunk of it is. Like, I mean, him having his whole battle with his half-brother over the throne and kind of balancing both worlds, the human life and the Atlantean side of him. There's actually a part of me that's actually surprised that there are bits of this movie that seem to take place on the surface, because I would kind of expect the entire movie to take place on the water, just it being an Aquaman movie. But because you do have those dual sides of it, it makes sense. So like, oh yeah, of course part of it would take place on the surface while part of it would take place in Atlantis. It kind of balances, the two sides of them. So from main antagonist wise, we do have, is it Black Manta? Because for whatever reason in the back of my head, I always think of Black Mantis. It's like, no, it's Black Manta. Which is interesting too, because it's like, well, he's Aqualad's dad, isn't he? Isn't that the whole thing? If I'm remembering my Young Justice correctly. which I'm curious to see will he ever pop up in this. I mean, once again, it's like, I mean, you can still set up stuff, but it's just kind of flowing in the back of my mind, which I hope, that's why I kind of talked about the whole technology thing, because that's one of my favorite things about Aqualad is how his weapons work. It's like he can like his weapons almost work like a Green Lantern ring, but like instead of like, you know, it's water, like, oh, he can make a water blade or a water mace or something like that, which that's why I'm bringing up the technology. We don't really get to see it like that. That's why I was kind of curious to see what their technology is like. Will we see like weaponry like that or not? But also, it's gonna be crazy to see like all the, you know, sea creatures and stuff fighting it out, especially considering like what's a more recent movie. Doesn't it come out later this month? The Megalodon movie is just called Meg, but with Jason Statham in it. It's just kind of interesting, just it's funny in my head. And then kind of moving on to Shazam, like I was just kind of bringing up, it's just kind of, I mean, obviously this is just a teaser. At least with Aquaman, that was like the full first official trailer. I'm sure there's gonna be at least one more, but at most there'll probably be two more, you know. But with Shazam, this isn't like the official, so we don't really get 100% of what the story is. Like I said, it was more kind of a tone setter. Just, I mean, it gives you an idea of like, oh yeah, Billy gets adopted. And I like that line in the movie where he's just like, no, don't let this family fool you. They're kind of terrible people. I'm like, oh wow, that's so. And he's like, nah, I'm just messing with you, dude. I was like, that's good. I thought, I was like, oh man, we're gonna have one of those. It's like, no, we're good. I was like, okay. Interestingly enough, God, isn't his adopted, or at least one of the people that was there in the scene, I guess that's one of his adopted parents. I let it slip my mind, but that's Jerry from The Walking Dead. I was like, Jerry! That was so cool. It's kind of interesting too, because kind of setting up Shazam, I think he's going to be like the first big magic user person. I don't know what his whole deal is. I think it's kind of like on the same level as Wonder Woman. I think it's like some god stuff, like it's like an ancient god or something that gives him, like we see it in a trailer, but I don't know what that whole deal behind it is, what the whole Shazam thing. But I think it borderlines on magic is what I'm thinking. So that might be the kind of first big push of that in the DCEU. But also, like I said, because it seems like they are having fun with it, just because you do kind of have like a lot of like jokes and just kind of funny moments even in the teaser. And also a Zachary Levi vibe, which I'm like super happy about. I'm like, it still kind of trips me out a little bit. It's like, dude, you're Shazam, that's so awesome. And I love, like I said, fleshing out his abilities, because him and one of his adopted brothers is like, you know, it's like, oh dude, let's see what your abilities are, what you can do and stuff like that, you know. So but beyond that, like I said, there's no like real 100% story trailer, because it's not like we get to see who the main antagonist is, like with the Aquaman one, or you know, what this overarching story is really going to be like beyond him trying to be a superhero and stuff. And I think that's kind of an interesting thing, making Shazam be where it is, because it's like, oh, you have this kid who's looking up to all these superheroes that are kind of established in this world. And it's kind of interesting really quickly, and this is something I've been kind of debating in my head, like ever since I saw the trailer. I haven't looked it up yet. Most often when you're thinking of Shazam, you are thinking of solely Billy. Like, he's typically the one, but it's like, I'm sure there's probably been other people who've probably taken up the mantle, just like with most superheroes and stuff, especially in the DC stuff, but you know, in superhero stuff in general. But the thing I'm wondering about is it my imagination? Because I could have sworn this came up in the Flash Paradox Justice League animated movie, that Shazam was actually multiple kids put together. Basically, the kids almost had like this Captain Planet thing going on, where it's like, oh, our powers combined and we make Shazam. When it was Aquaman, or I think it was Wonder Woman, when she fought Shazam, like she broke him apart, and like there were kids, and you know, I won't go down that route of what happens, obviously, but still. I'm pretty sure it was multiple kids, which is interesting. Obviously, like I said, this is setting up just Billy, but I'm curious, is that a different version of Shazam, or is that something that happens in Shazam's future, where it's like, rather than just being Billy, the power gets divided amongst multiple people? Because in this case, maybe it ends up being divided amongst his siblings, because like he is in an adopted family, and it seems like there's a lot of kids in the family, so that could be something that happens later on in his story. You know, it could just be like, oh, it's just Billy for now, but then eventually, if I'm remembering correctly, like I said, I could be completely wrong. I might be like misremembering, so if you do know, let me know in the comments down below, but most likely by the time this video actually goes up, I'll probably have looked it up myself. So my question to you guys is, how do these trailers make you feel? Are you excited, you know, to see Aquaman or Shazam, or, you know, to see the DCEU continue forward? Like, that's a question I've brought up quite often, because I've told people, you know I'm probably in the minority in this situation about how, like, I'm actually excited. Like, I've liked everything DCEU so far, but like I said, I know that's just me. That's just kind of like me and my particular taste. Like, whether, you know, if I enjoy something, I like it. it, so I just leave it at that. I know most people have not felt the same way about the DCEU, so I'd love to get to know your opinions. Has these trailers kind of changed your mind, especially because you can tell that they are going with a lot more like lightheartedness, that maybe they're not being as quote-unquote dark and gritty as the previous, you know, movies like Batman v Superman or Man of Steel. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this video. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live it to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.